Hey there. So far we've kept things relatively simple in terms of what we're learning and what we're studying. And this is really just covering this basic entry level of learning animal anatomy. And what we want to do now, if I can get this into a pin, there we go. What we want to do now is actually start to dive into the comparative anatomy section. And we've prepared ourselves for this with the simplicity. So what I want to do right now is recap what we've done so that you know the importance of what we've accomplished. The first thing that we've accomplished, in fact, let's do it this way. First thing we've accomplished is proportion. Okay, every time you get into a figure drawing class, a figure sculpting class, anything like that, the very first thing they want you to know is proportion and how things line up. So we've used this grid to help us understand a little bit more about how these animals are behaving, or how their structures are behaving. So we've looked at things like, is it a longer animal, a taller animal, a wider animal, those kinds of things, because their structure is relatively straightforward. Just like bipedal creatures, us, and different bipedal aliens and things like that that we invent, we all have similar musculature. Quadrupeds are all going to have similar musculature as well. But what's really defining what makes a bear, a cow, a horse, is where their rib cage fits into this grid. And what's their pelvis bone doing? Is their pelvis bone tilting back? Is it flat like a cow? All of these things are really important. Where's their head? Is their head up high like a horse? Is it straight and maybe down like a cow? Or is it straight like a lion or a cat? These are the kinds of things that we've studied and looked at, and those are the kinds of things that we're going to want to restudy again when we're getting more fluid with our sculpting. So we'll have some speed sculpting sessions to really get us doing these creatures really fast. All right, so now proportions are done. So let's come over here to number 2. Okay, we've also studied muscle groups. Okay, and by muscle groups I mean flexors, extensors. All right, so flexors would be, an example of a flexor would be the bicep group there. Okay, an example of an extensor would be the tricep group back here. And we've kept it really simple. Okay, nothing too major. We've just kept things really simple, really easy grouping that we've transferred from one model to another. So with this proportion setup, flexible or simple muscle groups setup, now we need to come in here to number 3. And this is when we're going to get into the musculature in more detail. And so I'll call it the musculature. And in this case, when we get into the musculature, it's really important that you guys are prepared for what we're going to do. At this point, we're going to jump into comparative anatomy, in deep with the different muscles. So it's at this point that we're going to take the human and turn it into the animal. Okay, but we've got a little bit of prep work before we get into the human into animal bit, because first off, there's a ton of muscles. I mean, a ton of muscles. So are we going to be moving the extensor carpi radialis brevis and then go in and move the extensor carpi radialis longus? What about the brachioradialis? What about the sternocleidomastoid? And then not only the sternocleidomastoid, but then we get into that whole dilemma of they're working with a different orientation to gravity. So their sternocleidomastoid's not a sternocleidomastoid. But that's the kind of thing that we want to get in and start talking about now. So next step, human into animal, but we've got a couple of things to do before we get to that point. So let's bring in the anatomy figure that ships with ZBrush. I'm going to use my colored version just because I like it. Put a little bit of wax on that. Come into render properties, render properties, put a little wax preview on. Okay. Cool. All right, so you can see off to the side a ton of subtools that go all the way down, a ton of them. So how are we going to handle this? So I just want to prep you for it. We're going to merge. We're going to group into flexors, extensors, according to the limbs, the torso, things like that. Okay, and then we're going to get in and we're going to position. All right, and this is going to be with transpose master. And then after we've got transpose master, we've got these guys positioned. Okay, this is when we're going to discuss the actual differences. So now we're going to get in there and we're going to modify. So this is when the sternocleidomastoid becomes something else entirely, because it's no longer connecting to the mastoid. It's now connecting to the jaw, to the mandible, or it's connecting to the occiput in the back of the skull. So all of that is going to change. And this is one of those, this is the meat, well, it's not really, well, it is the meat and potatoes of this kind of thing. And so our goal is to create some really cool écorché sculpts. But remember, this might be the meat, but if I was to go and redo that metaphor, proportions are really the potatoes. You know, you need to have those proportions in line for any of this to work. So let's get into the merging and the grouping, and then we'll go into positioning and then modifying.